Mitsubishi Diamond series. It's a shaft which has been around such a long time now. The original blue board launched 20 odd years ago. And a really iconic series for them over the years. You know, Tiger played it first out and played it for a while. And just great quality of materials. Everyone knows the quality of a Diamana shaft. We've just had the launch literally in the last sort of few weeks of the blue board, the latest blue board series. White board came out a few months back. Where we'd normally go into the tech details of the shaft in a video like this, I'm actually going to hit them and just say, well, actually from a player's point of view, what do they feel like and what's the experience like to hit them? You know, why do they perform a certain way, and to actually stand and swing them, what do you get from one shaft versus the other from an actual experiential point of view rather than just the data. So we've got, because we know how the flexes progress in the whiteboard, we've got a stiff and a TX in both shafts in the 63, which is my most appropriate weight for me. I'm going to hit both of them, describe the feel, and tell you what you're going to actually get out of them from a swinging point of view when you play them yourself. So I'm going to start with the whiteboard in the 63 stiff. So this has already been out. We've already done some pieces on this. You know, whiteboard's designed around lower launch, lower spin. So between the two shafts, say white series, lower spin and lower flight, and the blue board is a really versatile, neutral bend profile, you know, smooth feeling, in theory a little bit of a higher flight. But going to hit a few of this, describe the feel, switch over to the blue, do the same with the TXs, but really give you an indication on what you're going to feel hitting them. So you know, we know that this is stable down the bottom, you know, designed to keep the head really stable and keep the spin down. Yeah, and that's certainly, you know, in the stiff flex, there's a little bit going on in the shaft. It's not completely dead. I mean, that was always a potential criticism of some of the low spin shafts historically, is that they gave you nothing back, and that's something that's improved over the years for certain. So there's a little bit of give in that kind of mid and upper section, but very stable down the bottom. You know, I'm not feeling that shaft kick and flip. You know, certainly for someone who's a little bit more aggressive in their action, likes to get into the ball and give it a bit more of a hit. As a shaft, the whiteboard's going to feel like it holds onto the club face through impact and gives you something really stable to drive against. So, a little bit of feel from the shaft. Definitely not harsh, but say this is the stiff flex rather than going up into the X's, so you get a bit of feedback through this midsection, upper mid here, a bit of feel through the handle. But that lower section is very stable. So for anyone who's a bit more aggressive or turns the ball over right to left, this is a great shaft because it's going to feel like the club hangs on. It doesn't flip that toe over at all. So something you can really be positive with and get aggressive with, and it's going to hold on for you without being overly harsh in this stiff flex. Let's move over to the blue board in the same flex and get a comparison. So moving on to the blue. So the blue series is designed around being a little less harsh, you know, really, I say harsh, stiff, stable in that bottom section. So there's no part of the shaft that's, in terms of the profile that Mitsubishi described, as being overly strong. So it's a very smooth, it's always designed around a very smooth profile. So something that gives you responsiveness all the way through. The quality of material still holds on and gives you some stability through the shot. But it'll be interesting, having just hit the white, to see how much more responsive this really is. So to start with, the balance is a little less in the tip of the shaft. You know, where the whiteboard has a little bit more rigidity in that bottom section, the balance point moves down that a little bit more. And this is something that the white to the blue, the white has always been that way. You know, the more you stabilize the tip section, generally there's a little bit more stability material or a bit more material down there, so the natural weight position shifts down the shaft a bit more. But in the blue series, so it's designed around smoothness and consistency. So really a very uniform balance through the shaft. So one that you haven't really got to fetch the bottom end through at all. But interesting enough, I would say you still get that little bit of responsiveness through that midsection. I don't think this feels that much softer in the tip. You know, where there appears to be, and we'll look at the data later on, there appears to be a little bit more flight. This is by no means a weak shaft in that tip section. I know that the way that they describe it on their website, and when you look at the sort of zonal profiles, this would appear to be a lot softer. But actually, I think this is really crisp at impact. Something that you're not necessarily getting that much more kick and load and pop from this shaft than the whiteboard. They have different feel in different areas. I think the whiteboard, you get the feeling through the upper midsection, but then it's stable through the lower half. This one, maybe a little bit lower down, but I still get quite a lot of stability from the tip section. I'll hit one more with this just for uniformity with the whiteboard, but this is still a very stable feeling shaft. Just with that little bit of kick, just a bit lower down, but it's not loose in the tip section. So stiffness wise, we're now moving into the business end of things from a rigidity point of view. We're up into the TX, which is above an X flex. So it's a kind of Tour X flex. And we know from whiteboard tests that we've done previously that as they stiffen up, really the tip section is very, very stiff in all of the flexes of the whiteboard, but it's this mid to butt section which ramps up as you go up into the flexes. So that changes the balance point a little bit, brings it up the shaft slightly, but then really firms up that feel and gives you something that you can be super aggressive with in terms of getting that kick and load and working hard with it without the shaft feeling like it gives you much back or certainly gets away from you in any shape or form. So I'm gonna have to work this one quite hard, I think, to get the best out of it. Yeah, so that immediately is a much tighter feel where I feel like I've got a unit of a shaft. It's not lifeless by any stretch of the imagination. There is still something there, but this feels like the whole shaft is staying with me rather than one part kicking and giving me a little bit of load back. But I certainly don't feel like there's no way this shaft's going to give out on me. For anyone who's who's a heavy loader who really works it, and there are a lot of shafts that are going to feel like they get a little bit of wobble, a little bit of kick. Very little chance of that from this shaft unless you are ridiculously fast. It just stays, absolutely stays with me through the shot. That wasn't a great swing, but there's no flip in this whatsoever. A very small amount of pop in there. So there is still just a little bit there. It's not absolutely dead, but as that upper mid to grip section ramps up in terms of stiffness, you can work this as hard as you like and that's staying with you. So really stable for someone who really wants to get that tightness all the way through the shaft as one unit. Let's take it to the blue board 63 TX. So now into the blue board and the TX. So same as the whiteboard, the profile stiffens up all the way through, but with this one, be interested to see whether it retains just that little bit more feel and a little bit more pop through, seeing as it's not quite as hard a profile of shaft. Do we retain a bit of life in this one? Similarly to the whiteboard, I think, again, as this section stiffens up, it definitely doesn't get more tip heavy, for sure. Whereas the whiteboard, the balance point comes up as you go up into the stiffer flexes. With this one, I think it stays pretty uniform, but definitely what they've not done is loaded up the tip section just to get more stability. This is the whole shaft. So how does that compare? It's such a crisp contact with that. From someone who I've always played a low torque, so low torque being a kind of high resistance to twisting, I've always played a low torque shaft. That just feels super stable. Even between this and the whiteboard, there's not a vast amount in it. You can sense it is a marginal difference, but they're both such stable, such good quality materials that at impact, that crispness and that you could go as far as saying rigidity at impact. Just for someone who has a left miss, which I do, it just doesn't feel like the club's influencing that in any shape or form. It feels like I can really get into the shaft and it's there for me at contact. Yeah, so something I normally would pride myself on is picking up where the shaft bends. There's definitely a bit in the middle, but there's no real prominent bend point on this shaft. I think in the white, you get a little bit of a sense of bend in that upper section. With this one, there's a bit through the shaft, but then it's really impressive how it holds on at impact, and certainly stable under the handle end as well. There's no really prominent kick point, I would say, to this. it's just a really uniform, stable, balanced shaft. So data-wise, we'll do a little bit of a summary on that, but certainly from both sets of shafts, as you go up in flex, you're getting a lot of stability, a lot of rigidity. There's a hair more back from the blue board. In both flexes of the shaft, the TXs are quite similar. I think only if you're a really heavy loader of the shaft, you're going to really feel a big difference, other than slight little bit of weight and a little bit of balance point. In the softer flexes, the stiff flexes and down, you're definitely noticing a different point of the bend of the shaft, and definitely a little bit more kick out of the blue board, but that is what it's designed to do. But I think what's impressive with both shafts is that club face stability at impact. You notice very little twisting off center. I didn't middle all of those by any stretch of the imagination, but they stayed with me through contact. So we'll see if there's any data difference and do a brief summary on that. So brief little summary, because this is really more about the feel and what you're going to experience hitting them versus necessarily the data. I think what one can see from this is, for me, where that tighter, stiffer, firmer feel in the TX shafts, what it let me do is I felt more comfortable to get into the shot a bit more. Club speed's gone up with both of those versus the standard stiffs. So if you're someone who likes that firmer, tighter feel, then chances are that'll let you commit a little bit more to the swing, and you might gain a little bit of mile an hour club speed that way round. From a flight point of view, both of the TXs are a slightly lower launch than the standard stiffs. But actually flight data, bar contact being a little less good with the blue board TX, I think that's where for me I lose a bit more feel of the club head, which is something I need with the driver. But actually with the two stiff flexes, the data is incredibly similar. Launch angles, 0.3 of a degree difference, spins 5 revs difference on average for that batch of hits. And so distance is 1 yard difference. So I think what this shows you is that from a feel point of view, you can sometimes get a lot more difference than the data can show. And so whilst we pin a lot of what we do from a fitting point of view on data backing up results and validating, in this instance, what you could actually say is, well, there's very little actual ball flight difference between these two shafts, but if one feels better in the hand, if you feel like if you feel synced up a little bit more, if it feels more under control, if it gives you more confidence, that is enough to differentiate between the two. But they're both great quality shafts. I think the Diamana range will always be based around feel. Tensei with Mitsubishi is where they test new materials, and I can quite reasonably say that whilst they're very, very crisp and very stable through impact, neither's harsh or dead. You just know you're playing a very stable shaft in the TX flexes. So blue board gives a little bit more kick through the middle in the softer flexes, stable at impact. White board gives you a little bit more under the handle, but the lower half's a bit more solid. And we're seeing very marginal differences in ball flight. Face angle slightly more open with the white board in the softer flex versus the blue. Other way around, I timed the white board a bit better in the stiffer flex because of the balance point suiting me a bit more. But to hit with, both very stable. White board will resist a bit more load. Blue board gives you a bit more feedback, a bit more kickback. Both great quality products. I hope you like this video. So slightly different angle on it being more a feel based than a database on this one. But if you like this video, please like, subscribe, check out all the other content on the website, and we'll look forward to creating more content and let us know if there's anything you want us to do as well. We'll happily do that, but enjoy the rest of the content on the channel. We'll hope to see you again soon.